The African continent has a troubled history, stretching for centuries, characterized by endless oppression, exploitation, and outside intrusion. A residue of such a tumultuous history is a corrupt socio-political and cultural identity crisis that bleeds into every facet of society, bordering on a near-absolute Eurocentric dominated viewpoint on almost every issue, particularly on governance. Post-independence Africa was a continent plagued by political instability, economic challenges, and abrupt social transformations. A major shortfall that dragged down the continent during this period was military coups. From the 1960s to date, numerous African nations have experienced coups d'etats, leading to profound consequences for governance, development, and regional stability.
When a group of military officers the downfall of executive mansion of President William Tolbert, Liberia experienced this government had made their lives 133-year-old history.
Between the 1960s and 1980s, more than 50 successful coups, 56 attempted coups, and 102 alleged military plots took place in no fewer than 45 countries on the continent. It all began in 1963, when the elected governments of Togo, Congo-Brazzaville, and Dahomey Benin were toppled in the first post-colonial military coups on the continent. By the end of the 1980s, close to 60 successful military coups had been staged, and most of the 54 existing African states had experienced at least one coup or related incidents. By 2010, there had been 81 successful military coups in Africa, the majority of which took place in West Africa, accounting for more than 55% of all coups on the continent.
When a group of military officers raided the executive mansion of President William Tolbert, Liberia experienced the first coup d'etat of its 133-year-old history.
Between 1980 to 1999, there were 18 successful coups in West Africa, 4 of which occurred in Burkina Faso, 3 in Nigeria, 2 in Sierra Leone, 2 in Niger, then Liberia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, the Gambia, and Cote d'Ivoire. The history of military coups in Africa from the 1960s to the present is a complex narrative shaped by a plethora of factors. While some coups were driven by ideological considerations, others were responses to domestic issues such as corruption, ethnic tensions, and economic mismanagement. From leaders overstaying in power to sitting presidents amending the constitutions of their states to extend their terms in office, armed soldiers seizing power has been attributed, explained, and justified for various reasons. While this material is in no way, shape, or form intended to justify military coups, it will examine some of the reasons for the prevalence of military coups in West Africa. In 1980, Saye Zabo overthrew Sangole Lamizana of Burkina Faso in a bloodless coup. One of the reasons for Zabo's actions was that Lamizana, who also came to power through the barrel of the gun, lived a lavish and an immeasurable lifestyle at the expense of the nation as its leader. Zabo suspended the constitution of the country and engineered the Military Committee of Recovery for National Progress, Comité Militaire de Redressement pour la Progrès National, as the supreme governmental authority in the state. This committee was a 30-man committee, and 2 of the committee members would later reshape the history of Burkina Faso, that is, Thomas Sankara and Blaise Compaoré. Due to continuous citizenry dissatisfaction and civil unrest during Zabo's regime, another coup took place to overthrow him in 1982. The coup was led by Colonel Gabriel Yoyan Some. The plotters formed the Council of Popular Salvation, Council de Salut du Peuple, and appointed Jean-Baptiste Ouedraogo as the 4th head of state of Burkina Faso. Batista promised to return the country to civilian rule and release all political prisoners. He promised a transformation and a transition. However, none of these promises were kept. He continued to ban political parties and organizations and institutions through which opposition can be expressed. Batista's stay in power was short-lived, as he was overthrown by Captain Thomas Sankara in a popular uprising on August 4, 1983. Sankara had the Council National de la Révolution, National Council of the Revolution. He described the coup as a democratic and popular revolution, geared towards elevating the masses. In 1984, as part of his revolutionary moves, he renamed the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, the land of the upright people. Sankara joined the peasants, workers, and young people to carry out his reforms and development agenda. His government funded public works to build roads, schools, and houses. He established revolutionary courts to try former leaders and high officials accused of corruption. He introduced significant reforms in the education, health, social, agricultural, and environmental sectors. His actions were very unfavorable to the aristocracy and the wealthy of Burkina Faso, to say the least. Because the country had undergone too many military coups, the people were skeptical of military leaders and growing wary of Sankara's policies. After foiling a military coup attempt in May of 1984, Sankara was eventually overthrown by his comrade Blaise Compaoré on October 15, 1987. In the same era, in the 1980s and 1990s, similar events were unfolding in Nigeria. In December of 1983, the government of President Shehu Shagari was overthrown in a military coup and Major General Muhammad Buhari was installed as head of state. Buhari cited serious economic mismanagement, rigged elections, corruption, and indiscipline, and confidence crisis as the reasons for his actions. Speaking about the coup on radio, Brigadier Sani Abacha, as he then was, called the overthrown government inept and corrupt. In August of 1985, Major General Ibrahim Babangida overthrew the Buhari regime, stating almost the exact same reasons Buhari cited for seizing power. This trend of coup and counter-coup repeated itself in 1999 and finally in 1993, in which Sani Abacha himself, now a general, overthrew Ernest Sonenkan. In Niger, rivalry between President Mahamane Usmani and his opposition, the Prime Minister Hama Amadou, who had control over the parliament, left the government virtually paralyzed, providing a justification for General Ibrahim Bare Mainasara, who seized power on January 27, 1996. Mainasara ushered in a new constitution and conducted a presidential election on the 7th and 8th of July 1996. Winning 57% of the votes. The election was viewed as fraudulent because on the second day, the 8th, Mainasara dissolved the Electoral Commission and replaced it with another Electoral Commission. He also had 4 of the opposition candidates placed under house arrest. Mainasara was assassinated in a takeover in April 1999. In Sierra Leone, President Joseph Seydou Momo was overthrown by a 25-year-old military officer, Captain Valentin Strasser, on April 29, 1992. Under President Momo, corruption, mismanagement, and all the usual suspects were prevalent in the country. And to make matters worse, the Sierra Leone Civil War broke out in 1991. Frontline soldiers were disgruntled by the poor supplies, unpaid salaries, and the overall deplorable conditions in the front lines. Being a fighter in the war himself, Strasser experienced these conditions firsthand. He was wounded by a shrapnel and could not be evacuated, and out of frustration and anger over these conditions, he and other junior officers organized a coup and sent Momo to exile. But prior to the 1992 military coup in Sierra Leone, Liberia, a neighboring country, had its fair share of military coups and insurgencies, parts of which led to the formation of ECOWAS intervention forces. In our next episode, we will delve into Liberia, Economic Intervention Forces, Yahya Jammeh's coup, and his close relationship with Sani Abacha. Stay tuned.